Castell's farm has been in our family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather first arrived on the farm in the late 1930s, and we've been milking cows ever since. This is everything to us. We're a profitable farm targeting high milk solids, currently milking about 200 New Zealand Holstein Friesian cows. But it wasn't always like this. When I first took over the management of the farm, the cows didn't go outside because we'd invested in a fully housed farming system. This meant high feed bills and more time needed to look after them as they were high yielding. We had to work hard all year round just to keep our profits up. It was tough. Something had to change.
I first met Sean about 5 years ago at my LIC grazing group, which is called the Plonkers. This is where farmers meet every month to discuss new farming techniques, best practice, and share their experiences.
My dad encouraged me to join the LIC grazing group, and this was a real game changer for us. We'd been toying with the idea of extending our land and moving to pasture-based farming, but we lacked the knowledge and experience of extended grazing systems. LIC and the farmers in the grazing group gave us confidence to make the move.
It's great to see the difference in Sean's herd now. They're grazing 8 to 10 months a year, so his feed bills are much lower. And they're autumn block calving, which means the really busy times are condensed into less than 6 months.
We're now a much more sustainable and profitable business, with a farming system that gives us all a better work-life balance. I've now got more time spending with my family, doing less hours with more cows.
There's no doubt his great-grandfather would be proud of him.
Farming has changed since my great-grandfather worked this land. As a traditional industry in a modern age, we now have the ability to create a sustainable and profitable business that also gives you a work-life balance.
Hello and welcome to North Shropshire College's Walford Farm, LIC's monitor farm. Over the last year we've been working together to transition the farm into an autumn block calving grass-based system from an all year round system. Today's webinar series is going to be looking at how the last year has gone and also looking forward to what we can do. So we're going to be bringing in experts to try and lift the performance of the farm over the next year and also give us a bit of clarity on how we've managed to go over the last year. I'm Sean Chubb, the lead pasture profit consultant for LIC in the Midlands and Wales. I'll be facilitating the questions today and I'll now pass on to Tom to introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Tom Moore, I'm the farm manager here at Walford. I've been here for nearly 2 years now. We're trying to take an all year round calving herd to a autumn block grass-based farm, trying to improve sustainability, drive down costs and increase our profitability.
I'm Emil Brown, I'm an FSM with LIC. My role in this with the Walford College is on the breeding side. We're transitioning the cows from an extreme Holstein to a crossbred Friesian type cow, also moving to an autumn block.
Hi there, my name's Sam Evington. I'm the cow manager specialist for the UK. I've been working with the system for about 4 years now, something like that. Here at Walford, they've been working with it for around about 12 months and obviously seen very good results.
Hello, my name's Helen Matthew and I work for a company called Germinal as an area manager, so we are a seed forage specialist. I work as a livestock forage specialist within the agricultural team. I've been with Germinal for 15 years and prior to that I was working for probably around 15-20 years as an agronomist on livestock farms within this area.
Hi there, my name is Nathan Lowenstein. I'm one of the clinical vets at Shropshire Farm Vets. I've been a vet for about 15 years now and have been working with the Walford herd for the last 4 or 5 years or so. The changes that are afoot now and kind of the move to being a block calving herd is really exciting, and it's great to see where we can take the herd from here.
All right, thanks everyone for the introductions. I'll now get Tom to give it a bit of introduction to the farm.
We've got a 24/24 herringbone with Impala feeders, milk meters, all singing, all dancing really. It's a pretty good parlour. It's quite good for the teaching side of it as well, the teaching facilities, and we're able to record a lot of data through the parlour, through the meat yields and through the feeders as well. So litres wise at the minute, the cows are averaging about 8,200 litres at the minute. We've come down about 800 litres in the last 12 months. But we have reduced our feed costs heavily as well. Fats and proteins at the minute, cows are doing about 3.3 protein and about 4.2 fats. At Walford we farm about 182 hectares. There's a 75 hectare grazing platform. We're growing around 20 hectares of maize as well, and then there's some offline grass that we use for silage and for rearing the young stock. Buildings wise, we've got enough housing for 160 cubicles. We're looking to change that and expand that in time. We're just about to start the construction of a feed pad as well. 2 large loose yards and various other buildings for rearing young stock as well.
All right, well, we're about to cover off how we've gone for this year in terms of targets that we set at the beginning of the monitor farm process. We're also going to go over the targets that were set, and we're going to look at the CFP performance of where we were beforehand last year and where our targets are this year. So if we actually start with the seasonal targets, so if we start by looking at the targets that we set for this season, and we'll go through if we actually achieve them or not. So the first one was achieving a consistent residual of around 1,600 or better by the end of the year. So have we done that? And from when on, or over the season, how did that go?
So it's gone really well. At the beginning of the season we were around the 1,800 when we first started out in January. As the weather improved and we increased the grazing intensity, we actually got down towards the 1,500 mark. We maintained that through the summer. A little bit of a challenge now on the back end, perhaps not achieving it, but I think all in all, on average, we would have achieved easily the 1,600 kilogram residual. So,
no, awesome. And so obviously with the cows getting trained into grazing now, that obviously next year we can go out and try and get a bit more consistency throughout the whole year and go from there. So the next one was getting the cows into 2 blocks, which we've obviously achieved with having a spring block and an autumn block. And next year, or next autumn mating, we're going to roll the springs in with them, so get it down to 1 block. The next one was keeping production around 8,500 litres. So yeah, did we achieve that?
Yeah, pretty much so. Rolling average of it's like 8.2. But in hindsight, we probably trimmed a bit more concentrate off than what we probably would have planned to as well. So even if it's a little bit lower, I'm still a bit happy. Still that. So the cost outweighed it. So yeah, it's gone well.
Yep, awesome. 8 months worth of grazing. So you said we turned out in January, and they're still out grazing now in October.
Yeah.
So that's 10 months worth of grazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously that's really good going. Do you see that being achievable? Well, 10 months worth of grazing, let's say, call it that.
Yeah.
Of grazing, is that achievable going forward?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, February. I mean, we should be traditionally we want to turn out in February time and maintain grazing till October, through October anyway. So it's a bit different this year with our starting cover, but yeah, no reason why we can't. Yeah, very achievable.
All right, good. Utilisation of 80% throughout the year. Now, obviously, with talking about those covers being not quite there, or the residuals not quite there at the front and back end of the season. Do you still think you have achieved 80%?
Probably not. In honesty, I think the low slacker rate hasn't helped with that one as well. I mean, we've done the best of the job we could have done with the type of cow we've got. I've probably pitched it around 70%, but we need to work on that one a bit more going forward in the next coming years. But yeah, I think. Yeah,
I would have put it somewhere around the same sort of level.
Yeah.
But as you said, stocking rate had a big impact on that.
Yeah.
When the grass was growing at 100 and we had cows, heifers, calves all on the platform, it's still getting around this. It's a tough ask to achieve. And so the final one was to grow 8 to 10 tonnes of dry matter. Where do we go?
We smashed it. In the first year, this farm was growing over 10.2 tonnes of dry matter, and we haven't finished grazing yet. So, we might get to 10.5, 11, a bit of luck. But yeah, we've outdone that one. Really impressed how the farm's growing, considering we've reseeded quite a lot of the farm as well. And we've had not the best year for growing grass. I wouldn't say that it's we've a lot of wet weather at the start, 2 droughts, and then a bit more wet weather at the back end. So it's not been the best year, but we've managed to achieve that target. So yeah, we're quite happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously with the other part of this is how to achieve a greater growth that we're looking at in this webinar. So yeah, I think the farm's well set up to go on and actually smash more targets from there. So if we move on to the targets that were set for this current season, so we're wanting 97% of heifers in calf. So what's the plan there?
So obviously the plan is we've installed the cow manager tags down into the heifers. We only use like 6 semen this time as well. But I think for what we did in the spring when we got 92% in 6 weeks, I think it's very achievable if we combine now. We didn't use the cow manager tag in the spring as well, which I'm probably keen to point out, but I think if we combine the two, I think that's a very achievable target for us going forward.
Yep. And then a 5% heifer mortality rate from calving through to entering the herd.
So, this year we've not lost a single heifer. So again, I think we're very much on course to get into that target as well.
Yeah, because obviously your mortality rate drops every day the cow or the calf gets older. So majority of your calves are through the danger period anyway. So hitting that 5% target should be a shoo-in now, realistically, unless something catastrophic happens. But hopefully not.
Yeah. Sure.
5,000 litres of milk from forage and total production of somewhere between 8,000 to 8,500 per cow.
Yeah, I think definitely that's more. It's achievable. I think that we've looking back on cow numbers. Obviously, we've been in transition as well, so then like cows with high days in milk, so that's had a bit of an impact on milk yield. I think in the next 12 months, I think milk yield will lift a bit more with more cows coming into the herd, or more heifers now going to come into the herd. And we managed to retain quite a lot of cows as well, I think, has been key. So I think, again, that one's very much on target for the next coming season.
So obviously achieving milk from forage is about having really good quality forage. How's the grass silage gone this year?
It's not been the easiest year to grow. We started off on originally our target was to do a multi-cut system and target quality over quantity. We did really well with our first 2 cuts. Don't think we've had a first cut. We didn't have the quantity with the type of season we've had. But I think all in all, our silages, we've got around 11.2 ME in our silages, so really, really positive, really optimistic what our silages are going to produce for us. And obviously, we feed fodder wheat to the cows as well through the milk, through the lactation. Very optimistic on that one as well. That can be achievable. And then again, we've reducing our concentrate use from I think year before like 3,500 to 4,000 tonnes per cow. We're down this year probably around the 1,600 to 1,700 mark. So
and then obviously the red clover silage is also going to have a big impact, and hopefully we'll be able to give a few more litres with higher fats and proteins as well. So the next one is a greater than 65% in calf rate. So that's a big challenge considering where the cows were last year at around 60, 65. So looking to put on 10 to 15% more cows to hit that 6-week in calf rate. So again, how are you going to achieve that?
I think, like Kiefer's, we found out who our problem cows were in this last 12 months. We didn't cull many cows from previous hours. We wanted to maintain numbers. We probably weren't as aggressive with the culling as we probably should have been. And again, I think being part of transition was the cause of that. But I think again, back to the cow manager tag, and I think we're going to be a lot more aggressive this time. If we're just we're just going to, any hint of estrus, we're going to put semen in, and I think we'll manipulate that a lot better. I mean, we look back what we did, again, we look like we did with the heifers this year, where the only heat testing we used with scratch cards, we did really, really well. I think we're going to take the best of both worlds and try and make a better job of what we did before.
Yep. So now, people who have watched our first webinar series might be a little bit shocked here, but 3 pence per litre CFP result, that's the target for this year. So yeah, for everyone that's a little bit shocked right now, how are we going to achieve that?
Again, by I think trimming costs. Obviously, the last 12 months we've had a massive push on infrastructure. I think by obviously getting the cow numbers up again is going to be key to that. And I think now with the systems in place, I think by being robust with the system and maximising potential system, I think we're very much on course to see that evolve.
Yeah, I think you touched on cow numbers there, which is going to be important to really dilute down those fixed costs that are here within the college. And yeah, no, I think we've managed to squash out a fair few costs there as well. So this is one that I put in for you to get the herd weighed and implement a weighing plan for the heifers. So when's this getting done, Tom?
So we'll look to start in the next few weeks. We've got obviously the crushers on site. We've just had a few little bits to finish off in terms of infrastructure. We've got a pen to build alongside it, and obviously we've got to just get the crush out for it. So hopefully the next few weeks we'll start pushing on with that, and not just the heifers, but we'll try and weigh the cows as well. Cool.
Like to hear that. And then 95% of heifers retained into second lactation. So obviously that's going to drive longevity in the herd and help increase numbers going forward. So what's the plan around there?
Again, I think it's just more attention to detail around breeding season. I think actually looking back this year, we've probably achieved 90%. So we're not too far away, but I think again, just a little bit more attention. And I think obviously the tag's going to help with that again, not just fertility, but then the health side of that, and helping to retain these heifers for other reasons, but other culling reasons, like mastitis and lame stuff. I think so. Yeah, again, I think we can easily hit that one. I think it's just more attention to detail and stuff.
Yep. So 12 tonnes of grass growing, 80% utilisation. So we've kept that 80% utilisation in there, and we've upped the growth rates. We're still going to need to grow a little bit more grass. So yeah, again, how are we going to do this?
Okay, again, we've got, like I said, we seeded quite a lot on the farm this year. Actually, we seeded like 30% of it. This year, we've got an extra 12 hectares on to come onto the platform for next spring. But again, cow numbers going up is going to help us manipulate that. And again, I think hopefully cows grazing harder again. And cows being more in one block, we had, like this year we had multiple blocks. We had a group of highs, a group of lows, a group of dry cows, calving cows, far off dry cows, young stock. The whole thing in the next 12 months has just become watered down and very, very simplified compared to what it was before. So
yeah. And I think with the fact that the heifers have been out grazing, they're going to enter the herd with a better enthusiasm, I guess would be a good word to use to actually get out and graze well, which will obviously help achieve the 80% utilisation. And then finally, we've just got our long-term targets still to achieve. So we've got the target of 14 tonnes of dry matter per year to grow. Which, looking at the best paddock this year at 15, we just need to get the rest of the paddocks up there, which isn't too far off there. And yeah, obviously, greater grazing pressure will obviously help us do that. We want to be in the top 20% or maybe even a little bit better in terms of CFP results against LIC farmers. We're making definitely in the right movements in the right direction. And then the last one is 2 years to get all cows within autumn block, which we're well and truly set up for. So no, I think those results should be achievable in the next few years anyway. So if we now move on to how the financial results went over the last, or comparing the last sort of 3 financial results we got, last 2 and the budget that we got for this year. So obviously we got the 2018, which was obviously before North Shropshire College took over the campus farm here. Then we've got through to August 2020, which was when the first year that we've tried to go grazing, which what would say that's about half of the season the cows were out grazing.
Yeah, I think we started layers in January. I keep remember the feeders, impala feeders actually come online until May. So we were still having to encourage buffer through that first period. And it wasn't necessarily target feeding. So again, we were incurring a bit of a cost there. And again, I think that obviously I'll show later on, but I think certainly since May onwards with the feeders in, there's been massive improvements in terms of that going forward as well. So
yeah. But obviously, looking at these results, we are down on cow numbers, but milk per cow is up.
Yeah.
So if we can obviously keep that and still continue to grow cow numbers, then we'll be even more the better. So if we look forward to the budget for this year, we've got 180 cows in, which we might not actually hit this season, will we?
No, we've had a bit of been caught in TV this year, which is obviously held us back a little bit. I said we did very good with our fertility results. We only lost 8%. I think actually our culling rate is actually down around the 20%, but TB's not helped the issue in the last few months. So that's put a little bit of a hamper on it, but there's a bit of a plan to push the cow numbers up in another way, which hopefully will come to fruition in the summer. We'll be thereabouts, but there is, I mean, the end goal for us ideally is to get to that 225 mark as quick as we can. To obviously help with these costs and to make the most and increase our profit margin within the herd.
Yeah. But obviously to counterbalance that is we've gone for our lower production target. So our production range was 8,000 to 8.5. So we've gone for the lower range. So even if we don't hit the 180 cows, hopefully we'll get a higher milk production. So then the actual income from milk will still end up the same. It's just where the milk's come from. It's come from less cows giving more instead of more cows giving less. And we'll keep the fat and protein roughly the same, but the cows buying in that you might look to buy in the summertime. What sort of cows would they be that you'd be looking to buy in there?
Well, we're looking at the crossbred cow. Potentially about spring cows, that can help us keep our milk solid. I think that's one of the other things we found this year is our milk solid with the Holstein cow out on grass did drop off. So anything that can keep us up at 4%, stop any further penalties, I think it's going to be key as well. So if we can buy in, we're looking potentially 40, 50 potentially in the summer that we could hopefully buy in and just keep cow numbers up, but obviously keep that level of milk solids up. And then obviously give us the options going forward then and give us the flexibility to change the cow type to what we want as well.
Yeah. And so, obviously getting in some crossbred cows will help with the fat and proteins as well, which, obviously only the fats will give you a higher payment, but still having a higher fat and protein will obviously give options in the future as well for milk contracts and that. So if we actually move on to the overall figures. Again, everyone who was here for the first webinar series will be aware of these sort of results that were coming in 2018. If we start comparing them against the actuals for 2020, well, output's down, but that's because of lower cow numbers. But overall, everything's moving in the right direction. So if you just want to start talking us through some of these numbers, Tom, because I think some of them are going to need a bit of justification to explain how we're going to go from here to our budgeted numbers. So if we start with the feed one, how are we going to get another sort of 5,000 or 55,000 pounds worth of reductions in feed costs?
Yeah, I think we touched on it earlier on that we've not actually run the grazing system since full on, the system we want to run anyway since May. So, and it's key to remember these budgets stuff from August on the college's accounts. So, really, we've only had 3 months on the pure grazing system. So, a lot of those costs actually were incurred through the previous all year round calving system and obviously the high winter feeding costs. So I think actually moving forward, and we are budgeting, we are going to hit, we're budgeting feed wise, not just financially, that we will hit that target of 70,000. So
yep.
I think it is more than achievable.
Yep. So around the forage costs, I think some of those might have also been mixed around as well, which could potentially be up in the feed costs, like the maize, or potentially down in the contracting costs as well for the maize. So I'm not too sure exactly where that's gone, but nothing's really going to change on the forage basis, is it?
Not really, no. I mean, we're still looking to buy in the fodder beet going forward. Obviously, we'll grow maize, or maize and grass we grow on the farm. So I can't see much of a change in that.
Yeah. And then so the livestock costs, one of the main costs back in 2018 was bedding, which we've managed to slash and burn a fair bit over the last year, but we're still looking for another step down in costs there. Now, when we went and looked through the cost structure, there was a fair bit in vet and med and breeding and recording. And you thought that the breeding and recording might have been the manager tags, actual implementation of that system going in there. So can you just talk around that a little bit?
We obviously with the tags, there's a setup cost. The tags themselves are £27 each. You got the routers on top of that, which is about another 500. We've got the one out in the paddock, which is about 1,500 as well. So there's added cost there. At the start, we've got every cow and the heifer's now got tag in it, so we've invested heavily in that system. And then, from now on, we only have a running cost of £17 a cow to run that. So I think there's a bit of a cost there. Obviously, with the vet and med as well, keep that. We were still on the all year round calving system for a very, very long time, and we did spend heavily in the autumn on intervention, because we were trying to force issue perhaps a little bit too much, but I think so we incurred a bit of a cost there. So I think, again, there's room to manoeuvre those sort of things. Bedding wise, we smashed that, we looked into that, and we'll drive that down a bit further. But I think livestock costs were well and truly, driving that down.
Yeah. Just to give a bit of a comparison, because we're talking about the bedding costs, in 2018, the bedding costs were somewhere in like £150,000 or something like that. Last year they were 15, so we've dropped it by 10%. Or 90%. Sorry, yeah. So we've done a really good job there, and that's pretty much all moving cows out to grass.
Yeah.
And then so para machinery, and this is where the contracting costs come in. And then, but obviously there was a lot of work done on the farm in terms of tracks and all that sort of work. So a lot of that's going to get lumped into here as well, hasn't it? We think.
Yeah. So a lot of the cost with hiring machinery. We did all the tracks ourselves. We did the water ourselves. Contractors did the bulk of the work until this year as well. We've had quite a lot of restructure around the machinery side. 12 months ago we didn't own a single machine on the farm. It was all on lease hire. We've gradually over the last 12 months managed to move those machineries off and a bit of a swap around, and we've reinvested in new machinery this time around without actually spending a single penny. We own all the machinery now on the farm. We can do our own mowing and raking, which is driving the cost down as well. But the only machine actually we have on the finance, but we still own it, is actually the Manitou. And again, I think the feed pad is going to drive that down a bit more, moving away from a TMR feeder wagon to just a block cutting system with the Manitou and the tail ender. I think we're pushing costs, we're just going to push that cost even further.
Yeah. And then so labour we were a little bit unsure on, because pretty much for the majority of last season it was either you plus one worker or you plus two workers.
Yeah.
And this year we had you and two workers for the whole year. So we weren't quite sure there, but that could potentially be the fences or other sort of contract work potentially in there, we're thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's other contract work, there's a couple of anomalies in there as well that I think it's key to remember that actually that at one point no one was actually directly employed on the farm, no one was actually directly employed by the college at one point, by agency or contractors, so again there was incurred cost in that.
Yeah.
But it's cost that was, in fairness, it's cost that the farm needed to get it to where it is today. We just need that extra bit of vans at the time, and we took that one on the chin a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. But obviously, we're looking 2018, close to £500,000 worth of loss. We managed to slash that in half, almost, or pretty much have slashed it in half. So, brilliant work. And then with the budget we've put together, which, taking into account everything that we've spoke about of what's still in here around the changes, we're showing a £45,000 profit, which is where we've come up with the 3 pence per litre profit from. Is there anything in this budget that you're slightly worried about that's going to affect this profit and the target that we've got of 3 pence per litre profit?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've obviously got a few more little infrastructure changes to make, but obviously I can't have a capital budget. Shouldn't really affect our running budget, but I think we're pretty much on course. Getting milk sales up is going to be key. Could be a few extra livestock sales this year. We've got the spring. In the spring, we've put all the cows to beef. So again, there's a bit more livestock sale there as well. So potentially there'll be a few more cool cows if we can get the right type of cow in, and it gives us those options again. That on domestic, these cows, they're big heavy cows. They do bring a bit of a premium as well on that front. So there's a few more feathers in the cap that we can manipulate a bit if you like, but I think there's nothing screaming out that we don't think we are going to hit, but I'm pretty happy with what we've put in place.
Yep, awesome. Well, that actually segues us into the next segment quite well around talking about the cow weights, because this is looking at last season's energy and where it's gone. So the blue is milk production, and the orangey yellowy colour is on the maintenance of the animal. So as the cows have been weighed, we've worked on an average of 700 kgs per cow. Could come in higher, could come in a little bit lower, but I've run the numbers. If we move to a 750 kg animal average, we're only going to be increasing the maintenance up to about 41%. So we're not moving it too much. But obviously, what we're going to be looking to do going forward is keep monitoring this, and what we're going to try and find out is at what level on the farm do we minimise the maintenance level and maximise the production level. Obviously, if we go to too small of an animal, then we're going to start lifting up the maintenance again, as we're going to need more cows, and we're going to be impacting on milk. So we're going to try and find that happy balance. We think it's around 550 kgs cow, but who knows? We'll find out sometime in the future, hopefully. And also, what we're going to try and do with this is we'll capture all the feed fed throughout the year, and we'll be able to work out a wasted percentage on top of that, and then that will also help us drive towards our financial targets as well. So Tom, this year's been about really getting the cows out and grazing, and being Holsteins and haven't been really out grazing before. How have you felt that they've gone this year?
To be fair, I think they've gone really well. They've adapted to the system very well. We've not seen any any massive changes in the cow. Of course, we've lost a bit of milk, but we've also reduced our feed costs, which I think has been massively beneficial for us. And it's been difficult. We've got a low stocking rate from what you'd usually want, but we've managed it pretty well, and it's gone really well.
Yeah. And so at the beginning of the year, we set some residual targets. We sort of wanted we wanted the cows to be consistently hitting residuals about 1,600 through the entire year. Now, obviously, in the back end of the season, the cows are starting to leave a bit more behind. But how'd they go through the entire year?
I mean, for the entire year, they were easily managing it. I mean, some days we're doing 1,500. We started the cows grazing low yielders in January. And they took it pretty well. We didn't push them too hard at the time. We sacrificed residuals a little bit then, but the cows soon adapted, and definitely the more cows we could get out of grass going forward, the easier it became to get those residuals. And we went from a full TMR system in the last 12 months down to a grass and cake system this year, and it's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. You need to correct the residuals at all throughout the year?
We never actually. Never did any actually much behind the cows. And I think actually we only pre-mowed around 15% in front of the cows. So I think all in all it did really well. Key was we just get them into the right pre-grazing residual. Try not let pellets go too far ahead, and if they did, we'd identify them for silage, and we'd obviously shorten the roundup and stuff like that. But yeah, it's gone pretty well, to be fair.
Yeah, because that's been probably the key thing with these cows is getting that pre-grazing calving target right. And so obviously to get that you need to know what sort of intakes of grass the cows are managing to achieve. And so what level of grass intake did you actually manage to achieve with the cows this year?
At times this year we was managing 14 kilos to the high yielding cows. Of course, they're still getting around 6 kilos of corn, but down to low yielding cows, they were doing 18, 19, and a kilo, 2 kilos of corn in the parlour. So we were managing to get the grass into them. That wasn't an issue. Of course, for the Holsteins, as the grass quality dropped off, we found that we had to introduce buffer probably a little bit earlier, or we were crossbred, which has had a bit of an issue with residuals at the back end as well. But apart from that, it's gone really well.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And so, how did you assess at what level the cows needed to have grass compared to cake to ensure that the wheels didn't fall off the system?
We're driven purely by getting the cost down from the last few years, and as the cows were, we basically the cows doing doing between 25 to 30 litres. We'd start to reduce their level of corn. We'd basically anything over 150 days of milk, we reduce the corn, encourage them to eat more grass. We see very little milk loss. Across the herd we lost about 800 litres compared to the old system, so we're fairly happy with what we've achieved, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And so the ability to get out early and stay out longer has been around the spring and autumn rotation planner that you're using through AgriNet. With the type of cow you have, that hasn't held you back at all, has it?
No, not really. We've just managed it. We've usually the heifers here as and when we can to help maintain that. Even at times where we have peak growth, we've used the heifers to help maintain the wedge. And again, we've used some of the offline area at times where we had the odd drought to push the cows and keep them grazing. No, we didn't introduce buffer feeding at all until early September. And that's purely based just on grass quality that the dry mat was dropping off. So if on a normal year we probably wouldn't have introduced the buffer till later on again.
Yeah.
So it's gone really well.
Good. And obviously a big one for block calving's body condition score, and being such a big cow and grass dry matter's not been up there at the same sort of level as your drier feeds that you get in a TMR system. Have you had any issues with body condition score through this time period?
I think we lost a little bit of body condition with this type of cow post calving, probably a bit more than what we would have liked. Again, which I think prompts us to step in with a buffer. Of course, we have to bring the cows in at some point for the breeding season as well, so we get a little bit dictated by that. So like the milking herd they're in at night now, the plans for them to come in full time at the end of the week anyway. That gives them at least 2.5 weeks to settle down before we even start breeding. And again, we just manage that last 20% of our rotation with the heifers really. And the heifers are quite key to what how we manage the farm and set the farm up again for next year.
This field's been designated for reseeding. We've got fodder beet in it at the moment, which you're planning to outwinter on. And then next March, as soon as you can, I presume you'll be putting a reseed back in here.
It was a poor performing paddock the year before. We put this into fodder beet. We're going to graze this time round. In March we're looking to put a longer term lay, ideal for grazing. Going forward, we'll reseed it in March. We'll obviously put muck on after, and we'll just cultivate it, and re-drill it.
So your plan is not to plough it again. The plan is to just work the surface. That's great. Yeah. I think a lot of these outwintered sort of stubbles or soils, if you like, whether it's a brassica or fodder beet, they can be got into a good sort of condition to reseed. Particularly with sward lifters and things like that, you can get a very good seed bed following those. So what sort of lay are you looking for, and what's it got to actually do on your farm?
So a long term, obviously we want a longer term lay. A good lay for grazing cows, so like a tetraploid diploid mix.
Okay.
Obviously with a kilo of clover in it as well.
Yeah.
Obviously a grass type that we can obviously get the best utilisation from grazing.
Yeah.
And if we have to silage it, we can silage it as well and still get a decent utilisation from silaging.
Right. So the emphasis is on grazing.
Yeah.
The emphasis, I presume, will be on spring grazing, early grass, as you've got your autumn block, or you will be, and they'll all be, ready to get them out as soon as you possibly can. Okay. And when you say long term, you're looking at sort of a 5-year type mixture.
Yeah. I think we're going to aim to graze. Aim to on our reseeding policies like 10% every year. So like 5 to 10 year if we can.
Yeah. And you're quite happy using mixtures, yeah?
Yeah, quite happy.
Yeah. I like mixtures. That I think when you're putting mixtures together, you can balance things. You mentioned diploids and tetraploids, heading dates and so on to get the best out of the mixture. So 5 years, we're immediately looking at perennial ryegrasses.
Yeah.
And then what would you actually select for? Would you sort of use a recommended list, or the Irish list, or the Scottish list, and what would be your key sort of requirement apart from yield? Obviously everybody wants yield. Are you?
So, obviously, yield is obviously a key one.
Yeah.
But I think we want good grazing type grass really.
Yeah.
If it's good enough for the cows to graze, that's what we're really after. And then I think a bit of key for it's the clover then to try and help lift our milk solids as well.
Yeah.
And increase our milk quality.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things we'd be sort of looking to put in mixtures or considering mixtures is D value. So we'd be selecting varieties that have a higher D value, particularly the grazing D value. And the difference between sort of a better variety, if you like, a higher yielding grazing variety, can be as much as something like 20,000 megajoules of energy a hectare. So varietal difference is very important when you're putting your mixture together. And then for that sort of to be in your rotation, we want sort of maybe about a week, 10 days at the most, heading date range between the earliest heading and the latest heading. We tend to go the more diploids, the more grazing, then the more diploids we tend to put in a mixture, because the diploids are denser, they have more tillers, they've got better ground cover, so they support stock a lot better. And particularly when we get wetter ground, diploids really sort of come into their own a bit more. Tetraploids are that broader, darker leaf, and they graze very well as well, and they bring different things to the sward, and they do blend very well. They compete well with each other to get a nice balanced sort of grazing mixture. So I'd be looking at intermediate and late heading perennials. Probably the earliest heading, would be something around the 26th, 27th of May, and the latest might be, end of the first week in June. So you've got that's your heading date range. probably 60-70% diploid at least, I would say, and maybe 30-40% tetraploids. And yeah, choose for grazing yield, but also D-value. And you know, they're all the varieties that are sort of on the recommended list over here and in Ireland, they do actually give you those statistics. So it's a good place to start to pick your varieties for a grazing with some cutting in your mixture. Clover's the same really. We blend white clover. Predominantly dairy grazing, we go for a blend of medium leaved. So you know, the white clover is a stoloniferous plant, isn't it? With the sort of stolons and leaf size, and the larger the leaf size, generally the higher the yield. But very often the fatter the stolon and the looser it's sort of attached, and it tolerates sort of more lax grazing. So medium leaf white clovers, and they've, you know, that supports the growth and the sort of grazing habit of the cows as they come and sort of rip into the clover.
So we're in the poorest producing paddock on the farm. So Tom, can you give us an overview of how much grass this paddock has grown this year?
So yeah, this paddock's grown on average 9 tonne over the year. It's for 9 tonne for poorest performance, not too bad really, considering where we have been in the last few years, and considering it's the first time we've intensively grazed these cows. So whilst it's the lowest it is due for reseeding, but mainly for compaction issues, I think.
Yeah, and just to give you a comparison for everyone else, what is the best producing paddock on the farm this year?
So the best producing is around 15.
Right.
So yeah.
Yep. So Helen, Tom's talked about, you know, potentially it needs to be reseeded, potentially a bit of compaction there. So before we go gangbusters and reseed this whole paddock, what should we be looking for to identify why this paddock isn't performing as well as the other paddocks?
So the first thing I do, well, I mean, Tom's doing exactly the right things. He's measuring his yield, so it's a good idea, and he can make a comparison between one paddock and the other. And 9 tonnes, while it doesn't sound much compared to 15 tonnes on some of his better paddocks, 9 tonnes not actually a bad yield. But clearly we've got some differences there. So we have a walk across the field. The first thing I'd do is, you know, check your pH and P and K and make sure we've got a recent soil sample, and that we know that the basic soil fertility is good enough to support, you know, the yields that we're looking for. So that's, you know, your pH around that sort of 6.5, and good P and K indexes, probably around the sort of the 2 indexes, and that we've got all the fertiliser applications right. And I get into the field and have a real thorough walk across it and check what sown species we've got. So we're looking obviously for perennial ryegrass, and at a glance through this field, you know, it looks as if we've got a very high percentage of the sown species, so probably 90% perennial ryegrass. There aren't many sort of the indigenous type grasses in this field, and we've got a good percentage of clover for this time of year. So I'm happy roughly with the species that are there. We've got good clover in it. If you look across the growth a little bit, you know, we've got some slightly uneven growth, which you might think it could be poaching, or even some of that could be traffic, just machinery. So you get your old spade out and go out and you dig some holes, and you just work out, all we're trying to do, we're trying to cut 3 sides of the square and flip the surface over, and then look down for any restricting layers. So those are horizontal layers that are going to stop any water going through or any water going downwards. So we're looking always with soil for sort of vertical movement of air and moisture in both directions, and the rooting in the same way. As soon as we identify a layer, if we find a layer, you know, it'll be tight and that sort of thing, and you might see some sort of rust on roots and that sort of thing. As soon as we find that layer, we work out how deep it is, and then if we want to correct it, we use the right equipment, whether that's a sward lifter or you know, or an aerator, to actually crack through that pan. That can only be done when the soil is dry enough to take the tractor and crack the soil without smearing it. Very often that might be sort of September, but at a dry time of year. I mean, you can see down this face. I'm not sure how long it is since it's been reseeded, but the roots sort of, you know, the roots don't seem to get a lot deeper than that there, and you can see there's sort of a dark layer there and another little bit a bit further down, which suggests possibly sort of slurry or something like that. So, you know, maybe the P's and K's are good. Maybe it's had a lot of slurry and a lot of traffic over the years, which sort of could be contributing to you know, to that sort of pan layer in the bottom there. I mean, generally it's not too bad. It's not obviously panned, but yeah, we'd probably need to dig a lot deeper than and you know, do several holes. The other thing is, when you dig in a hole, you don't just dig one hole. You know, you dig in problem areas and good areas, so you know what your soil profile should look like.
So Helen, you've given us an overview of what would be a good grass mix for the college in the springtime. What would be your recommendation for other grazing systems in terms of what sort of seed mixes they could be looking at?
So specifically grazing, as soon as we're talking about grazing and we're looking at lays that have got last more than 4 years, it's always going to be 100% of a perennial ryegrass type. They're going to be the most persistent. Grazing, we're not really looking for too wide a heading date. You know, we tend to focus still on the intermediate late, maybe up to sort of 10 days at the very, very most as a heading date range. When the emphasis is on grazing, we're still looking at diploids, particularly if it's in slightly wetter areas. As I say, we tend to focus on diploid. The more cutting that we want, the more mowing. You know, a lot of people are trying to introduce sort of a multi-cut type system, and then we introduce gradually more and more tetraploids into the mixture, the more mowing we're trying to effect. Having said that, that's sort of very much a sort of traditional type dairy grazing sort of mixture. We're looking more and more now to put more and more tetraploids in, just because there are very, very good tetraploids, very good grazing varieties, diploids on the market as well. But we're finding that this blend of diploid, tetraploid works really well, intermediate and late. Other species, if you've got very dry land, Tom's mentioned here, they like to use white clover. And other people are starting to look at putting herbs in, things like a little bit of plantain and chicory if it's really dry. So just bringing those other species in with deeper rooting and different type of rooting and a waxier leaf, they can give us a bit more productivity when it gets really, really dry in the summer. So those are potential for use in grazing lays. And really, there's all sorts of information that you can get access to, whether it's the sort of the recommended grass and clover list for the UK. There's a Scottish list, and over in Ireland they're doing a lot of work. They have a pasture profit index where they're measuring grasses under specific dairy grazing regimes. And they're using much simpler mixtures, maybe just 2 varieties, a diploid and a tetraploid, and they're measuring, through their system, they're measuring what each variety is giving them. And some varieties are worth a lot more money per hectare because of the yield and specifically the energy that you can grow. So energy, that's ME, it's the D value. So all the grasses have their own D value that's recorded, and obviously the higher the D value, the more megajoules of energy. It's megajoules of energy at the end of the day that produce milk or put live weight gain on.
I know, brilliant.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Thank you everyone for attending tonight's webinar. We'll now go through the questions. If you've still got more questions, please feel free to send them through. So the first question here is, you've got more milk from less cows. Should this be a strategy for the herd? Tom, do you want to start off with that one?
More milk from less cows. Potentially, it depends on our feed costs and how much. We're trying to reduce the maintenance cost in terms of feed. So, I mean, the key for us is get the weight of the animal down. But we still want this. Obviously, we're still talking an 8,000 litre animal. So we will probably go a little bit lower than what we have been doing in the last 12 months.
Yeah. Amir, do you have anything to add to that?
If you can get a lower cow for every 100 kilos, with above 550, it's costing £150 in maintenance alone. So that's what the aim is, to get 550 kilo cow, taking in 5 ton of dry matter efficiency.
Very good. So the next question is, was the reduction in costs what you expected?
There was, I hoped. We needed to improve costs. I think we've saved costs in places where I expect to save costs in terms of feed and bedding. Obviously, our labour bill is still a bit high, and some of the other ones. But I think we definitely proved that in terms of general cow performance and the cost of running the cows, I think the costs have definitely gone the way I wanted them to go.
Yeah, I'd agree that the costs were sort of in line with what we talked with, but probably the income, we probably budgeted a little bit high last time. So when the The loss came through as high as it was. I was sort of expecting 100,000 less than that myself. I don't know about you, Tom, but yeah. Anyway, the cost side of things was around where we budgeted anyway. This is probably one for you, Helen. What would you suggest for herbal lay in an autumn grazing? I'm guessing an autumn grazing system.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So autumn grazing for dairy cows, obviously clover by that time of the year, the end of August, early September, clover is probably going to be quite prolific. So the first thing would be to be sort of aiming to get a good percentage of clover growing, but also a consistency across every sward. So the most dangerous thing also at that time of year is going to be bloat. So we know we're going to be able to grow clover, but we want a similar percentage in every paddock, so we don't finish up with cows one day eating a lot of clover and another day they're not eating enough. So it's a good and even and consistent percentage of clover. I think the herbs, mostly for dairy cows, would probably be plantain. It's a lot easier to manage in a grazing rotation than chicory, which particularly, when you get to May, chicory is far more prone to bolting than plantain would be. So if we're going to put another herb in, my first choice would be plantain. So that would give you a very simple blend of grass, legume and herb, just perennial ryegrass, white clover and plantain. From there, you can add other herbs, lesser herbs. When I say lesser, I mean maybe not quite so bulky in terms of the fresh weight production to the sward. There are various there. Finding them and what they're actually contributing to the profitability in terms of milk yield might be a little bit more difficult to quantify, and they're expensive every time we add them. But if we're looking for diversity, there'd be other herbs, yarrow for example, and things like that we might want to include. Again, you might use, if it's a dry farm, that's when they're going to come into their own. And you might want to use some red clover as well, or another legume such as bird's foot. But again, if we're using legumes, we've got to make sure that we have got a similar percentage in every sward everywhere to avoid, particularly in September, bloat. When we've got those cooler mornings, the dry matter of the grass is perhaps going down, the grass is very wet, and the animals will tend to gorge themselves on the legumes, with the subsequent potential for it to cause bloat. So it's about, I think, the herbal swords, it's about presenting a consistent quantity and quality of the relative ingredients. But first choice would be white clover and probably plantain for cows. And then there's other grasses as well. I'm being very narrow-minded in the perennial ryegrass, but some people would like to use maybe timothy and cocksfoot and fescues in as well, other grass species.
All right, very good. This is probably for you again. What depth should roots be if you're checking grass performance?
Yeah, okay. That's obviously going to depend on the length of lay and the management of the lay. So, perennial ryegrass roots, they can easily get down to that sort of 8, 10, 12 inches. But when we did that hole and we're looking for them, looking mostly for a healthy root growth, so that vertical length, we don't want to see anything that's sort of turning right, and then just sort of gradually a good density near the surface, obviously, but good quantity of root down to about sort of 6 inches. But you'll find tendrils and roots that are going a lot deeper than that. The important thing is that the growth habit is vertical. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Tom, are you going to grow fodder beet, or are you going to keep growing?
No. No, I'm never going to grow in my lifetime. I love it as a feed. It does a really good job. I'll probably want to buy it in. I've had pretty bad experience this year with growing it, so yeah, probably not.
Do you just want to touch on that experience a little bit?
Not really. We had trouble establishing it. Obviously, it came very dry. I had issues finding people to drill it. It's had a lot of spray applications, and it still looks like
a weed garden. Then I found out I've got issues with lifting it. So it's just never been a positive spin with the bee. We never actually plant out winter on it. And as you can see from the videos, we've ended up putting bales on it. So yeah, I love it as a feed. It definitely has a place in the diet. And it'll keep a place in the diet, but I won't be growing it.
No, fair enough. And then last question we got here is, how often do you check the dry matter of the grass?
So we were checking it monthly with a nutritionist. You know, he just sends off a sample every month. He just pops in, he does his thing, and yeah, no, we're quite doing it routinely, to be fair.
And how are you using the dry matter results with your management of the grass?
So there was a lot of buffer feeding going on at the start. I think I mentioned that in the last video. Obviously with the type, well, we were waiting on the feeders going in quite a bit, so we used it quite a bit then to buffer feed them accurately, and stuff like that. And we just use it as a checkup to make sure we were getting the right level of intakes into the cows as well, which is really key. Because like these Holsteins, they are bigger and they will eat more than your conventional crossbred. We found that out quite quickly as well. So yeah.
Yep. I know. Thank you. So that's all the questions we have for now. We'll call it a night for tonight's webinar. This is the last one for our October Open Day webinars. Please keep an eye on our Facebook page for further updates from the farm, and we'll be holding another Open Day in April, probably next year. We'll finalise the dates and all that and get that out as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the future on the farm. All right, thank you. Bye.